Chapter 43. Originally, Li Hongming was waiting for the good news in the study. He was calmly practicing calligraphy. When the hidden guard entered, he didn't even look up. "Where's the thing?" "Your Highness, please forgive us. The mission failed. We were ambushed. Our brothers all died in order to protect us." Li Hongming suddenly tightened his grip on the brush. In an instant, the veins on the back of his hand bulged. He clenched his teeth and his face was ashen. He was obviously suppressing his anger. In the end, he didn't succeed. He slammed the brush on the desk and angrily flipped the things on the desk. Trash! The hidden guard knelt on the ground. He endured the severe pain and didn't make a sound. Li Hongming turned the desk and kicked it. The hidden guard was kicked to the ground, but he struggled to get up and still knelt upright. Li Hongming saw the dark red blood on the ground and didn't kick a second time. "Speak, what happened?" The hidden guard clearly recounted the situation in full detail. He was impartial and didn't have the slightest mixed emotions. Li Hongming was almost certain who did it, but he still wanted to confirm further. He didn't want to jump to conclusions based on his own guesses. "Do you know the background of the other party?" "It's Prince Kang's men. One of them has fought with this subordinate before. Although I haven't seen his face, this subordinate is very sure of his background." Li Hongming clenched his fists. "Li Hongyi, this prince underestimated you. I originally thought that you were just a defeated opponent. I didn't expect that after years of hunting, you would be pecked in the eye by an eagle." "Good, very good. Let's wait and see. Go and recuperate." "Yes, this subordinate will take his leave." The hidden guard got up, but he suddenly felt dizzy. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he fell to the ground. Because of the pain, he clenched his teeth and his whole body couldn't stop convulsing. Although he was still conscious, it was likely that he wouldn't make it. "Why haven't you called a doctor yet?" Li Hongming angrily said. This person was one of his elite soldiers. He was very distressed that so many of his men had died. He saw that he was still useful, so he didn't punish him. But this was the result. The mansion doctor hurried over. After taking his pulse, his complexion wasn't good. "Your Highness, the poison has penetrated deep into your organs. There is no saving you." Li Hongyuan looked at the black blood on the ground and finally reacted. An endless storm was brewing in his eyes. "Send him on his way." "Thank you, Your Highness." The pain of the poison was not something an ordinary person could endure. It was better to die quickly. From Li Hongming's point of view, this was Prince Kang's way of not leaving anyone alive. In reality, Li Hongyuan knew that Li Hongming was very suspicious, so he left someone to pass him the evidence. However, it was not easy to train a hidden guard. Naturally, it was better to have one less hidden guard. With this, Li Hongming was completely unaware that the people who surrounded and killed his subordinates were all dead. Naturally, he was even more certain that it was Prince Kang's doing. Although the item in 100 Flowers Tower wasn't particularly important, it was still a weakness that could be used against him. If it wasn't handled well, it could cause him to lose more power. As for the situation over there, he still wasn't clear. Li Hongming was considering whether to send someone to investigate and see if it was possible to bring the item back. Or should he simply give up on that part of his power and clean up the mess to better protect himself? No matter what choice he made, his losses were certain. The only thing he could do was to minimize the losses as much as possible. "Your Highness, young Master Lu requests an audience." Li Hongming didn't have a good impression of his brother-in-law. However, he still needed his help occasionally, so it wasn't good to reject him. Moreover, he might know something about the situation. The hidden guard's corpse had already been taken away, and the blood on the ground had been wiped clean. "Please come in." Brother-in-law. Perhaps he was used to being casual, but he didn't even greet him when he came in. He grabbed the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea, then gulped it down in 2 gulps. Li Hongming looked at him, his eyes clouded over. What happened? Young Master Lu eloquently recounted everything that had happened. He kept saying bad luck and bad luck. Li Hongming listened patiently, but there was only one conclusion. This idiot didn't provide any useful information other than bringing out the fake tricolor peony. However, was Sun Yilan's existence a coincidence, or was it Li Hongyi's deliberate arrangement? If it was the former, then there was nothing to say. If it was the latter, then what was his motive? Li Hongming sent his brother-in-law away, but he also decided to give up on Baihua Tower. Li Hongyi's people might still be watching over them. If he caught something that could be used against them, then the losses would outweigh the gains. Thinking of cutting off his tail to survive, Li Hongming's heart bled. He swore that he would make up for it 100 times over from Li Hongyi. Who would have thought that Li Hongming's anger would only be stronger than his? He thought that his plan was flawless, but in the end, he still fell into Li Hongming's trap. Although he didn't lose anything important, the loss of his hidden guards made his heart ache. More importantly, he was still angry that he couldn't scheme against Li Hongming. His imperial father valued Li Hongming more, and the courtiers thought that Li Hongming was stronger than him. However, every time he fought with him, he lost more than he won. That kind of unwillingness and resentment sometimes drove him crazy. Because Luo Peishan sent someone back to report ahead of time, when they returned to the Luo family, including old Madame Luo, was waiting outside the gate. When they left, they were still fine. How long had it been, but now they were all in a mess. Master. Old Madame Luo, who had always been calm, couldn't hold it in anymore. She quickly walked forward and grabbed Luo Peishan's arm. Are you hurt? Luo Peishan patted her hand comfortingly. I'm fine. The most important thing is the third girl. Send her back first and let the doctor take a look at her. Old Madame Luo naturally saw Nurse Gong, who was about to get out of the carriage with Jingwan in her arms. The servant who came back earlier said that the third girl had fainted. It was quite frightening. What are you waiting for? Hurry and help the third girl down. Old Madame Luo hurriedly sent Jingwan back to the begonia house. The old doctor in the mansion was already waiting for her. Jingwan was in the inner chamber. Other than the servants by her side, only her mother, Madame Zhang, was there. The other mistresses in the mansion were all gathered outside. Because old Madame Luo was there, no one dared to say anything. Even people like Luo Jingying, whether they were gloating in their hearts or cursing Jingwan for not dying directly, didn't dare to show the slightest expression on their faces. Soon, the old doctor came out. Doctor, how is my granddaughter? Old Madame Luo asked with some urgency. Old Madame, don't worry. The third girl is fine. The injury on her head is not serious and there is no blood clot. The reason why she fainted was probably because she inhaled some smoke and was a little frightened. She will wake up soon. In fact, there was no red mark on Jingwan's head. Although he was old, he was a man after all. It was impossible for him to pull Jingwan's hair to see if it was a red mark. Ba. That's good, that's good. She finally breathed a sigh of relief. I will have to trouble the doctor to take a look at the master. Luo Peishan insisted that the doctor take a look at Jingwan first. He knew that he was fine, but if he didn't let the doctor take his pulse, everyone would be worried. Old Madam is too polite. This is my duty. The old doctor hurriedly said. After sending the doctor away, old Madame Luo went to the inner chamber to take a look at Jingwan. She ordered the maids to take care of her carefully and to send someone to inform her as soon as she woke up. She then looked at Nurse Gong, who had taken care of her ankle sprain. After a simple wash and change of clothes, Nurse Gong stood steadily and was still meticulous. She didn't see anything wrong with her. Old Madam heard from the young maid that her ankle was swollen like a steamed bun. For the past 2 years, Nurse Gong has done her best to take care of Wan Wan. I have seen it all. This time, she has done a good job protecting the master. Old Madam, I don't deserve it. I can't escape the blame for Mrs. Condition. Old Madam Luo waved her hand. That was just an accident. There's no reason to blame you. I'm not that unreasonable. You should take care of yourself. Wan Wan is used to you taking care of her. I don't feel at ease if someone else comes to take care of her. I will leave someone here to help you for the time being. When you recover, let her go back to my place. Chapter 44. Madame Luo left her most reliable mother in Begonia Elegant House. Even though she didn't like Madame Zhang, she still told her to pay more attention to her children. Madame Zhang was an old woman, so she shouldn't be involved in romantic affairs all day long. In the past, Madame Luo basically ignored her. It was the first time that she had said such words to her. Madame Zhang blushed and agreed in a low voice. Madame Luo left and took the other irrelevant people with her. Sure enough, just as the doctor had said, Jingwan woke up less than an hour after the group of people left. The servants had already helped her bathe and change her clothes. She felt refreshed and did not feel uncomfortable at all. It was probably equivalent to a good night's sleep. Looking at the medicine in front of her that was supposed to calm the nerves and suppress shock, Jingwan frowned. She still couldn't accept this bitter medicine. Besides, she really wasn't shocked. Could the old doctor not prescribe medicine so casually? Could she not drink it? However, her mother was staring at her with a tearful look. If she didn't drink it, she would probably have to face her mother's tears again. Miss, this is the only dose. If you are really okay, you don't need to drink it anymore. It will make Madam feel more at ease. What's wrong with your feet? Jingwan took the medicine bowl and looked at Nanny Gong, who was limping. Qing Zhu explained to her in a hurry. She exaggerated Nanny Gong's words and blamed herself for not being able to protect her. Nanny Gong acquiesced to Qing Zhu's words because some things couldn't be explained at all. According to her intelligence, if she really wanted to get to the bottom of it, she would easily notice something wrong. What Nanny Gong wanted was to give up the idea of asking. People like her also chose to show weakness at this time. Sure enough, Jingwan hurriedly asked her to go back to rest and didn't need to serve her for the time being. She didn't want to ask anything at all. She comforted Qing Zhu again. In the short time before Jingwan lost consciousness, her memory was actually quite vague. It was like some dreams. She basically didn't know the specific things. As for fainting after being hit, Jingwan also wondered whether it was a special situation like sitting in a carriage. She had always been a healthy baby, not delicate. It was a little embarrassing to say it out loud. Forget it, let's not pursue this matter. More importantly, she trusted Nanny Gong. She let Nanny Gong off so easily. Granny Gong knew this very well, so she felt even more guilty. However, she had no choice. She couldn't say anything, and the young lady had important things to report to the King of Hell. If she refused, she didn't know what he would do. He might even attack the young lady's room at night. Fortunately, he only wanted to hold the girl in his hands. Jingwan drank the medicine as if she was going to die. Her appearance made the people around her cover their mouths to stifle their laughter. As her mother, Madame Zhang was the most unkind and directly laughed out loud. The main reason was that Jingwan was able to handle everything properly and was not like a girl from the boudoir. It was only at this time that people felt that she was truly a girl from the boudoir. After drinking the medicine, Jingwan hurriedly sucked on a candied fruit and heaved a sigh of relief. Jingwan didn't ask anyone to report to Madame Luo. She changed her clothes and went to the main courtyard. The others tried to stop her, but Granny Gong didn't. She knew very well that the young lady's health was as good as before. Madame Luo didn't expect Jingwan to come over by herself. She was a little worried about why she ran around after waking up. After Jingwan repeatedly assured her that she was really fine, she was naturally overjoyed. Jingwan asked about her grandfather's condition and was relieved when she learned that he only had a few scratches. Just now, Lord Diwu of the Supreme Court sent someone to deliver an ink peony. Your grandfather couldn't sit still. I'll go take a look as well. Before she could stop her, Jingwan stood up and bowed. Then, she hurriedly left. Madame Luo put down the hand that was reaching forward to hold Jingwan's hand and sighed, this grandfather and granddaughter pair, Madame Luo, look at third young lady's spirit. I think she's really fine. You should be happy. A mother comforted her. Madame Luo laughed, yes, I should be happy. Old master is also full of spirit. When the grandfather and granddaughter get together and take care of the flowers and plants, old master won't lament that his children and grandchildren are unfilial. None of them have the same interests as him. When he's happy, the others will suffer less, so that they won't be scolded like quails all day. In fact, if the whole family knew that he liked flowers and plants, such as Luo Jingying and the like, how could they not think of ways to please him? A few children and grandchildren who knew about his hobby could do it casually, but they couldn't do it well. Not only did they not please him, but he also disliked them. He didn't want others to know because he found them annoying. Now, in this family, there was no need to hide it. They should know that they didn't have the capital to compete with Jingwan. After knowing that her grandfather was in the flower room and not the front study, Jingwan felt even less pressure and directly went over. Grandfather. Hearing this, Luo Peishan raised his head and didn't ask about her physical condition. Whether she was well or not, he would know by looking at her spirit. That was why most of the time, men were more rational than women. You came at the right time. Grandfather really doesn't know how to deal with this black peony. Jingwan stepped forward and looked at the black peony. Compared to the first time she saw it, it was even worse. The petals had basically fallen off, and the leaves were probably smoked by the fire. Even if they weren't burned, they were seriously dehydrated. Girl, can it still be raised like this? Luo Peishan was very doubtful. Although it was rare, he really didn't like it. The worst flowers and plants in the flower room were countless times better than this. Jingwan carefully examined it. It can be raised. It doesn't look good now, but grandfather will definitely like it in the future. Grandfather, I heard from grandmother that it was sent by Lord Diwu. How did this flower fall into his hands? I thought this peony was buried in the sea of fire. If that was really the case, she would be very distressed. This should also be a mutated species. Who knew if there was a second one? Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. On the way back, the fifth Tai Ching bumped into someone carrying this peony. He remembered that you wanted it, so he stopped the person and asked about it. The person was just greedy and took it away. He wanted to raise it and maybe sell it for some money. Jingwan nodded. She didn't doubt it at all. Diwu Taiching and Luo Peishan also didn't doubt it. As for Mama Gong, who knew the truth, she probably kept a straight face and didn't say a word. The reason why Li Hongyuan didn't let Sun Yilin and his sister encounter this peony by chance was because he discovered some of Sun Yilin's thoughts. Even if his future right-hand man took a fancy to the person he loved the most, it was absolutely not allowed. It was already Li Hongyuan's kindness that he didn't immediately teach him a lesson. It was fine if he couldn't personally please Wanwan, but if he let other men with bad intentions do it, his brain wasn't filled with water. Of course, it would be best to send it directly to Jingwan without going through a middleman. However, the situation didn't allow it. If he missed today, it wouldn't be so easy to take it out in the future. Jingwan personally planted the peony back. Luo Peishan had never seen some of the treatment methods, so he watched with great interest. Grandfather, this peony was taken out by the young master of the Qin family. Regardless of whether it's his or his backers, when this peony is revealed in the future, will it attract trouble? Needless to say, Lord Diwu knew very well that secretly keeping and raising this peony was not a good idea. Some people were shameless, especially those with noble status. You really couldn't do anything about it. If it was under normal circumstances, it would be fine. The problem was that it was an eventful time to fight for the throne. People had to think more about it. Chapter 45. Diwu Taiqing, that old man, will take care of it. You don't have to worry. If the other party really wants to do something, he will take care of it. Luo Peishan did not hide his shameless thoughts at all. Jingwan was somewhat speechless. Grandfather, is there really no problem? After all, this peony is in our hands. Do you think that old bastard sent this peony just because you like it? Would he be so kind? Isn't it because he took a fancy to the treasure in your hands? Do you know how many years he has coveted those treasured camellias? He can't even solve such a small matter. Does he have the nerve to ask? Third girl, let me tell you, if that old bastard doesn't bleed, you absolutely can't give your camellias to him. Grandfather, since Sir Diwu wants it, we can just plant another one for him. Although it's a bit difficult, it's not impossible. The mother plant definitely can't be given to him. She didn't know whether it was because of technical limitations or other reasons, but those flowers could not be propagated in large quantities. It was already good if 1 out of 100 could survive. The survival rate was unbelievably low. It was reasonable to say that it shouldn't be like this. After all, although the survival rate of the reproduction methods that already existed in this world was not very high, it was definitely not that low. Plant another one. Luo Peishan was interested. Jingwan first asked people to move the black peony to the Haitang elegant residence. Then, the grandfather and grandson pair started to do all kinds of things in the greenhouse. Jingwan regretted those small succulents, as well as the flowers and branches that she carefully selected. Although those were abandoned, Jingwan felt that the possibility of growing into plants was not small. Unfortunately, they were really buried in the sea of fire. The succulent bonsai could only wait for the peddler to get it again. Although most of the time, one person was talking and the other was listening, and then disregarded their identity and got their hands dirty, it was obvious that even if there was no obvious laughter, the atmosphere was very good, and both of them were physically and mentally happy. When Luo Jingbo came over with Chen Jingmin, they saw such a scene. The two of them looked at each other, not knowing whether to go forward and disturb them. It was Luo Peishan who saw them first. He waved his hand, and the two hurried forward to greet him. Jingwan wasn't embarrassed by her clothes, nor did she avoid them. She calmly greeted them, Cousin Min, third brother. Chen Jingmin couldn't help but take another look at Jingwan. No matter what, the girls he met on a daily basis were either gentle, dignified, playful, or cold and arrogant, but none of them would disregard their image like this. However, at this moment, Cousin Wan was exceptionally lively in his eyes. She didn't put on any makeup, her face was healthy and naturally flushed, and her eyes were sparkling. Noticing Chen Jingmin's gaze, she wasn't shy at all. Instead, she was a little puzzled. Cousin, why are you looking at me like that? Could it be that my face is also stained with dirt? She looked at her hands. They were even dirtier. She didn't dare to touch them. Chen Jingmin blushed and coughed to cover it up. He turned his head away and said, "No, I was being rude." Jingwan smiled carelessly. She washed her hands and looked at the sun. It was getting late. Granddaughter will go back first. Luo Peishan agreed. Change your clothes and go see your grandmother. Jingwan's eyes moved slightly. Something must have happened. Otherwise, grandfather wouldn't have specially instructed her. Yes. After Jingwan left, Luo Peishan looked at Qin Jingmin again. At first, when his wife told him about it, he felt that this brat was barely worthy of his granddaughter. But now, he found him more and more unpleasant to the eye. Rascal, where are your eyes? She's almost gone, yet you're still sneaking peeks. Do you think this old man is blind? Don't you know that you shouldn't look at girls? Where's your gentlemanly demeanor? Then he thought about how his precious granddaughter would become someone else's in the future. She would become a pampered guest even if she came back to see him, let alone accompany him. Originally, he thought that these happy days were just beginning. Now that he saw the end, the more he couldn't bear it. Cough, his voice was like a clap of thunder, and anyone could sense his displeasure. Not to mention Qin Jingmin, who had a guilty conscience. Even Luo Jingbo was startled. Brat, didn't you say that you would come next afternoon? Why are you here now? Listening to his usual serious voice, Qin Jingmin felt that there was anger in his tone. He couldn't help but lower his posture. This student heard about the flower market by coincidence. I was a little worried for a while, so I came early to take a look. Once he found something unpleasant, Luo Peishan saw Qin Jingmin's concern as ulterior motives. The news spread quickly. He wasn't surprised that outsiders knew that he was also in the flower market. After all, he and Diwu Taiqing had the highest status in the flower market at that time. This point couldn't be concealed. Moreover, this matter was strange. There might be more to it. Perhaps the entire imperial court would soon know the role he played in it. He glanced at Luo Jingbo again. Why are you still in a daze? Have you finished your homework for today? Luo Jingbo did not know how the fire had gotten to him. He had been by his grandfather's side for more than a day or two. Although he appeared serious on the surface, he was actually very angry right now. There was no mistaking it. If his grandfather got angry, even his father, who was the least afraid of his grandfather, couldn't withstand it. I haven't finished. Grandson will go back now. Luo Jingbo unkindly left Qin Jingmin behind and ran away. His speed was still graceful, but it was definitely not slow. Qin Jingmin felt a little cold behind his neck. He had a bad premonition. You go to the study and wait. This old man will change his clothes. Yes. Jingwan went back to the Haitang Inn to change her clothes. Nanny Gong asked the maids to specially take care of her hands. At this time, Jingwan had no human rights at all. If she dared to say no, the servants would not say anything. However, Nanny Gong looked at her with a serious face, as if she had done something wrong. And the maid stared at her with hidden bitterness, which was also unbearable. So, what she had to do was to accept it obediently. When Madame Luo looked at Jingwan's white and tender hands, she nodded with satisfaction. Madame Luo knew what Nanny Gong did as early as when she was in Qi and Mansion. Therefore, even if Nanny Gong was not born in a noble family, she still valued and trusted her very much. She didn't just worship her because she was a nanny from the palace. She was really good to Wan Wan. Wan Wan, what I want to tell you is about your cousin Min. That day in Ding General Manor, because several princes were there, no one paid attention to Madame Ding's meeting with us. But after you left, Madame Luo told what happened later in detail. Sun Yilan is a good man, but Ding General Manor is a pool of muddy water. You can't marry him. When I mentioned your cousin Min, it was just an excuse to refuse. Your grandfather also said that you should make your own decision about your marriage. I don't want Wan to be wronged. Madam's son always has an excuse to deal with her. Jingwan knew that her grandmother told her everything. It was not because of her identity as Madame Ding and wanted her to see the situation clearly and decide on Qin Jingmin as her fiancé, but because she didn't want to hide it from her. Grandmother, Cousin Min is also good. Wan, you can think about it again. There's really no hurry. Grandmother, didn't you say that people's hearts are fickle? Things in the world are impermanent. What's good now may not be good in the future. What's bad now may not always be bad. This life is lived by people. As long as you manage it carefully, there will be some problems no matter how bad it is. Besides, who said that a woman must rely on a man to live? Those women who are unhappy in the back house are partly because of men, and partly because of themselves. Although I've only seen Cousin Min 2 or 3 times, I feel that I have some standards for judging people. After all, she was not really a girl who lived in the boudoir. Her father in her previous life was a scumbag, but he also taught her a lot of things. Her judgment of people was definitely not just a few points. Madame Luo didn't know whether to be distressed or gratified. Well, you can meet with Min Gear in the afternoon. It won't be too late for us to decide then. Okay. Chapter 46. At that time, she was very calculative about gains and losses. Later, because of her grandmother's silent correction, she changed. When others were sincere, she was willing to give them her sincerity. When necessary, she could also give them her sincerity first. However, if she did not receive a response, she would not hesitate to take it back. It could be seen that she was still more rational than emotional. If it was her family and friends, there might not be any problems. However, if it was a man, then she would probably never taste the taste of true love. It seemed that she was already deeply in love, but once the other party had a change of heart, she could say, "Since you are heartless, I will end it." If she could take it back just like that, was that still love? True love could last for a long time, but it could also go crazy without hesitation. When it was broken, one would want to redeem it. In short, they were inextricably linked. It couldn't be cut off completely just by pulling out a knife. Jingwan felt that it would be very, very difficult for her to truly fall in love with a man. Jingwan was deciding Qin Jingmin's future with her grandmother. In Madame Luo's opinion, as long as they decided, it was enough. She did not think that Qin Jingmin or her third brother would oppose. This was the mindset of most people. After all, her daughter was marrying into a lower family. Whether it was the family style or the girl herself, there was nothing to be picky about. What reason did they have to disagree? Jingwan, on the other hand, did not have such a domineering thought. Who knew if the other party had a girl he liked in his heart before he came to the capital, and was just waiting for him to pass the imperial examination and return to marry her grandly? It was actually very easy to find out whether he had a girl or not. If there was a girl, she would definitely not agree to the marriage. Although strictly speaking, there was no such thing as a mistress in this world. Concubines, and tongfang were all legal. On the other hand, Qin Jingmin was in deep trouble. Last time, when his granduncle gave him pointers, he was quite appreciative of him and said that he would definitely pass the exam. His attitude seemed strict, but was actually gentle. This time, Qin Jingmin broke out in a cold sweat. The questions in the books were getting more and more difficult and more difficult. When he solved the questions, although he was a bit stumbling, he still managed to answer them. Even if it was not the best, it was just passable. Current affairs and policy were terrible. No matter how knowledgeable he was, to put it bluntly, he was just a teenager. Although he was not ignorant of outside affairs and only focused on reading books, and had learned a lot from his grandfather, his understanding of national affairs was still limited. How could he compare to a veteran who had been immersed in officialdom for decades? Especially when he had decades of experience as an official. It was like an ant and a tree. Chen Jingmin had seen many past exam questions. Even the palace examination was definitely not this complicated and profound. He complained in his heart. "Granduncle, aren't your expectations a bit too high?" How could he know that previously, he was treating his old wife's grandnephew, so he naturally felt that he was outstanding enough. But now, he was facing his future grandson-in-law. If he wanted to marry his beloved granddaughter, even the top 3 were far from enough. When it was time for lunch, Chen Jingmin was finally released from the study. He felt like he was about to collapse. Even if he could not answer, Luo Peishan would not reprimand him. His bearing was still self-restraint, and he would only look at him lightly. Chen Jingmin only felt that this gaze was even more unbearable than a scolding. But thinking about the benefits of this suffering, Chen Jingmin braced himself and endured it. If there was a next time, he would not turn back and would not have the thought of avoiding it. Luo Jingbo saw that he looked like a frosted eggplant and was extremely surprised. "What's wrong?" Chen Jingmin wiped his face and forced himself to be alert. "Nothing." But no matter how he looked at it, it did not look like nothing was wrong. Thinking about his grandfather, Luo Jingbo naturally guessed the reason. Grandfather is a bit strict. He treats people like this, but he rarely says a word to outsiders. Chen Jingmin nodded in deep agreement. He believed that he was not good enough. After lunch, they chatted casually, digested the food, and rested for a while. Luo Peishan dragged Chen Jingmin to the study alone. It looked like he was going to spend most of his lunch break on him. This was a privilege that the children and grandchildren of the Luo family did not have. Luo Jingbo automatically went to Jingwan's place to learn painting. Just painting was very simple for Luo Jingbo, but he was far inferior to Jingwan in terms of the layout of the painting. Moreover, he was not as agile. Although Luo Jingbo had seen Jingwan's completed paintings, this was the first time he had seen the painting process. Seeing how relaxed and casual she was, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. This sister of his was indeed extraordinary. Fortunately, Luo Jingbo was not a rotten wood when it came to painting. His foundation was also good. However, when he saw his sister's hundreds of paints, he was amazed and envious. "Little sister, grandmother is really biased towards you." His tone was quite bitter. Jingwan smiled proudly. "Can't help it. Grandmother likes me." Luo Jingbo had not reached the point of competing with his biological sister for favor, but he still had the urge to vomit blood. Not to mention that his fourth sister and the others were jealous of her, he also wanted to beat her up. However, not to mention that hitting people was not what a gentleman should do. If he dared to touch her finger, his grandparents and parents would definitely crusade against him. If he did not handle it well, he would be punished by the family law and thrown into the ancestral hall. The difference between fine brushwork and freehand brushwork was naturally not small, but it was not difficult to really understand how to paint. However, many things were the same. It was easy to learn, but difficult to master. Speaking of the 3 brothers, Luo Jingbo, Luo Jingming, and Luo Jingbo, they were all now scholars. Although they would not participate in the examination this year, their standards were not inferior to Chen Jingmin's. They were very clear about the reason why their grandfather suppressed them, so they did not complain. For the sake of the Luo family, it was worth it even if their grandfather would have passed away and they would not have such a good opportunity. However, Luo Peishan's concept was that even if there was help, he could not completely rely on it. He had to rely on himself. Don't think about relying on the influence of your ancestors. Instead, think about supporting the entire Luo family for a long time to come. If the three brothers could pass the examination in the same year, the status of the Luo family would definitely rise to another level. A family with strong descendants and slightly weaker ancestors was more valuable than a family with strong ancestors and no successors. It was more worthy of being roped in. Not to mention other things, the choice of the Luo family's girls in marriage would be more than one level higher. Unfortunately, it was not the time for the Luo family to be in the limelight. The three of them may have different temperaments, but they had one thing in common. They had inherited Luo Peishan's perseverance. Although Luo Jinghua was usually a bit sloppy and occasionally not in tune, when he really calmed down to study, you would not find the slightest bit of impetuousness from him. It was said that people who were serious looked the best, regardless of gender. Look, Jingwan's maidservants, especially those who were not brought by her from Qi and Prefecture, seemed to be a little moved. Jingwan looked at their innocent performance and was quite happy. However, it didn't matter if they secretly took a few glances. If they really had thoughts that they shouldn't have, even if it was the four head maidservants who had a deep friendship with her, she would never agree to it. Chapter 47. Miss, Madame Luo is in the pavilion beside the lotus pond. She asked you to accompany her. Qinglan entered the room and whispered. Jingwan paused. She raised her head and glanced at Luo Jinghua, who was concentrating. Then, she looked at Nanny Gong, who was walking like a normal person. She decided to call for the wet nurse to walk with her. It was Granny Gong who spoke first. Young miss, this servant is really fine. That medicine is really effective. Although it was very painful at first, it's basically not painful anymore. She had told her to rest earlier, but she insisted on staying by Jingwan's side to serve her. Seeing that Nanny Gong didn't seem to be reluctant, she hesitated for a moment and nodded. Then Nanny Gong can stay with me. The others stay and serve the third young master well. Let him have a rest later. Don't be tired. On the way. Do you think Cousin Min is a good man? Jingwan asked calmly. She was not shy when talking about these things. She was not asking Nurse Gong's opinion, but just asking Nurse Gong's opinion on Qin Jingmin. Child Chen is a talented man. Although I don't know how talented he is, he must be a young talent since he can get the master's approval. He seems to have a good character. I think he is a good man. Nurse Gong said. As for what she thought in her heart, no matter good or bad, no matter whether he is a good man or not, you will never marry him anyway. So, it's useless to say more. As for what that person would do, Nurse Gong didn't ask, let alone care. Jingwan smiled and didn't say anything. Sure enough, there was no Madame Luo in the pavilion. Only Qin Jingmin was half lying on the guardrail, throwing fish food into the water, and several people around Madame Luo were waiting outside the pavilion. The greetings of the maids attracted Qin Jingmin's attention. Jingwan walked in alone, and Nurse Gong also stayed outside. They were not close or far away, so others would not misunderstand. They talked in a normal tone inside, so people outside would not hear them, of course, except for Nurse Gong. Cousin Min, nice to meet you. Qin Jingmin hurriedly returned the salute. Cousin Wan, nice to meet you. Perhaps it was because the two of them were alone. Qin Jingmin was a little reserved. He was indeed innocent. Jingwan stepped forward, grabbed some fish food, and threw it into the water. The fish rushed up one after another to grab the food. Perhaps it was interesting, Jingwan threw a lot of food into the water. Cousin, don't spread it. If you eat too much, you'll turn over. Qin Jingmin hurriedly stopped her. That's right. A group of greedy little things can't be controlled by the person who feeds them. Jingwan didn't continue. Chen Jingmin felt that there was a hidden meaning in her words, but because there was no beginning or end, he couldn't make any guesses. Looking at the current situation, he wondered why his grandaunt hadn't arrived yet. It wasn't that he hadn't been alone with a girl before, in his hometown and at his granduncle's residence. However, those few times were all blocked by people. If it wasn't because of bold women who shyly and timidly said that they liked him, then it was because they kept pestering him. For the former, he could gently and politely refuse, but for the latter, he could speak bluntly. But now, he was a little at a loss. He wanted to leave first, but his heart was faintly reluctant. Jingwan talked to him casually and didn't look at him. Chen Jingmin felt that his cousin was natural and generous, so he lost his elegance. The feeling of helplessness gradually disappeared. Moreover, he found that this cousin knew a lot of things. Although she wasn't well-read, it could be said that she was experienced and knowledgeable in another sense. He didn't know how well she read the classics and history books, but one thing was certain, she had read a lot of travel books. Also, his cousin was very bold. Her words occasionally revealed harmless jokes, which made him somewhat unable to resist. However, he enjoyed this kind of atmosphere more and more. It seemed that no matter what was said, the two of them could continue the conversation and wouldn't be speechless. Looking at her spirited eyes and that bright smile that came from the heart, Chen Jingmin couldn't help but be a little infatuated. Jingwan didn't treat him as a blind date but as a pure friend. Perhaps she would probe a little, but she definitely didn't have a judgmental attitude. And from Chen Jingmin's words, she learned that he had traveled for a year or two to study. And those experiences were what Jingwan was most interested in, so she listened with great interest. Luo Jingying stood behind the flowers and trees in the distance, watching the two of them talking and laughing happily. She tightened her grip on her handkerchief, but she seemed to have thought of something and instantly calmed down. However, in the depths of her eyes, which others couldn't see, there seemed to be endless darkness. She turned around and left with her maidservant. It must be said that in this deep residence, other than her own brothers, it was very rare to see a youth of the same age. Even if it was a flower banquet or an outing outside, she would only see them from afar. Close contact was only for a short period of time, so much so that she couldn't even say a word. More than that, she only heard about them. It was true that she had some talent, but the people who pursued her were basically not real scholars or noblemen. It was this kind of situation that made it difficult for her not to be moved by the appearance of a person who wasn't inferior to many of the young masters in the capital in all aspects. After all, she couldn't catch those people, but it was much easier to catch this one in the palm of her hand. Luo Jingying took advantage of her cousin's reputation and came into contact with him twice. However, before she could do anything, she was ruthlessly restrained by her mother. There was only one reason: his status was too low. If she married him, she would only suffer. In Madame Lu's opinion, her daughter was good in every way. Even if there were some small flaws, she could erase them. Madame Lu had told her more than once that not to mention the nobleman in the capital, even if her daughter was of nobility, she was worthy. Her daughter could be considered as the daughter of the founding duke, so she deserved to live a life of luxury and be sought after by others. Perhaps because she had heard too much, Luo Jingying gradually believed that it was her fate. It wasn't that she was unloved, but that her marriage hadn't arrived yet. As for those who secretly said that they wanted to marry her, the highest was the legitimate son of a fourth-rank official. She had always ignored them. It's just that this young lady didn't want. Luo Jingying smiled faintly, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She wouldn't admit that when Chen Jingmin faced her, it was no different from facing a strange girl. He was a modest gentleman and didn't casually glance at a girl. Even now, he didn't even know who she was. Madame Luo, it's fourth young lady. A maidservant came over from the direction where Luo Jingying was. Don't worry about her. A good girl was taught to be like this by Madame Luo. Madame Luo wasn't interested in changing her back. Since Jingwan didn't go to the home school, Luo Jingying had gradually stopped since 2 days ago. In her opinion, there was nothing to learn from the home school. In the past, everyone went to the home school, including Luo Jingqiang before his engagement. Fourth uncle's children, except for those who weren't old enough to go to school, also started the school a few days ago. However, Jingwan was an exception. No matter what her mentality was, Luo Jingying wasn't interested in going to the home school. However, her parents actually agreed. After Luo Peishan and Madame Luo knew about it, they just nodded indifferently and didn't say a word. Perhaps they had nothing to say, but some people probably thought that they didn't care. Let's go. They said that they would come to accompany this old woman. If we don't go now, they will be anxious. Madame Luo held the maidservant's hand and walked towards the pavilion. Jingwan greeted Madame Luo's late arrival with a smile. Chen Zhengmin, who was originally looking forward to her arrival, felt a little strange at this moment. In Madame Luo's eyes, Chen Zhengmin's skills were naturally not good enough. Young people yearned, not to mention people like Wan. In short, Madame Luo never thought that Chen Zhengmin would look down on Jingwan. Unless he already had deep feelings for another woman, sooner or later, he would fall in love with Wan. Now it seemed that it was really fast. Madame Luo didn't find it strange. In her eyes, Jingwan was the best. It was normal for the best men in the world to fall in love with her at first sight. Jingwan was helpless about Madame Luo's incomparably strong confidence, but she couldn't correct it. Madame Luo also had the same attitude towards Luo Jingying. In the world, at least 9 out of 10 people were like this. It was just that the standards for what was good in their eyes were different, whether it was given by the younger generation or by them as the elders. Perhaps she wanted Jingwan and Chen Jingmin to be together again, so Madame Luo took the two of them to play in the garden for half an hour. Not to mention, after Jingwan came to the capital, she didn't have a good tour of the Luo family. There were really a lot of places that couldn't be missed. Madame Luo, third young lady. Amama hurried over and saluted. Madame Luo saw the special texture and extraordinarily exquisite and beautiful invitation in her hand. You brought it here now. Whose is it? Chapter 48. Madame Luo's face became serious. Why aren't you inviting her in? Sun Yijia had a noble status and was very polite. There was no reason for her to come another day. She glanced at Jingwan, lead her directly to the noble begonia house. Grandmother, third brother is still with me. Jingwan lowered her voice and then returned to her normal tone. Why don't you let Miss Sun come here directly? According to Miss Sun's character, there's no reason for her not to greet you. It's just that Cousin Min may have to leave for a while. Madame Luo nodded. Okay, we'll do as third Miss said. Min Gear has been out for a long time. Go and find your granduncle. You can rest in the Luo family tonight. It won't be too late to go back tomorrow. Although Chen Jingmin was reluctant to leave, whether there were guests or not, it wasn't appropriate for him to stay any longer. He bowed and left. As for Mama Gong, she didn't need Jingwan to say anything. She found an excuse and went back to the noble begonia house to drive people away. Then why did Miss Sun come to find Wan? Madame Luo was quite puzzled. Jingwan told her about the trip to the flower market. Sister Jia looks a little arrogant and cold. In fact, it's probably because it's lonely at the top. She's actually very good. After getting to know her, it's easy to get along with her. Madame Luo only knew that the flower market had a fire and Jingwan was injured and unconscious. She didn't know about other things, but she didn't know that there was such a relationship. She sighed with emotion. This fate is really wonderful. So many noble ladies in the capital want to be friends with Miss Sun, but they can't get what they want. Our Wan Wan is the best. And Wan Wan felt sorry for her from the first time she saw her. Maybe you two should become good friends. And it's probably fate. Everyone else approached her with a purpose. It was not that they were not sincere, but they still covered their sincerity with a layer of gauze. Jingwan was different. She just felt sorry and simply wanted to persuade Sun Yijia. However, she did not expect to touch Sun Yijia's heartstrings. What Madame Luo was thinking about was that if she could have such a close friend when she first arrived in the capital, it would be much easier for Wan Wan to integrate into the capital's social circle. Few people would push her aside and find trouble with her. However, there were also pros and cons. Sun Yijia was not without enemies, and all of them were of noble status. No matter how much they usually argued with Sun Yijia, for the sake of the Empress's face, they would at most exchange words and would not really do anything. If Wan Wan suddenly became close to her, those people might vent their anger on Wan Wan. Once Wan Wan suffered a loss in their hands, even the Luo family would not be able to seek justice. Seeing that her grandmother wanted to say something but hesitated, Jingwan naturally also thought of what Madame Luo could think of. Grandmother, not everyone likes money. I will try my best to avoid it. Yes, there were gains and losses. She could not forever not want to get something because she was afraid of losing it. Then, about Min Gear, Jingwan nodded slightly. Thus, the marriage between her and Qin Jingmin was set. The next thing to do was to go through the formal procedures and let everything go through the open road. Sun Yijia did not see Qin Jingmin. Otherwise, she might have asked or had doubts. Otherwise, she would have reminded her fifth brother early. Then, when Sun Yilin heard about it, he would not have been so lost for a long time. Perhaps it was out of habit, but when Sun Yijia walked in, Jingwan's first impression was, she was indeed a flower on a high mountain, beautiful, cold, aloof, and unattainable. This was her true self. The chatterbox in the morning seemed like an illusion. No, that was not right. That was a side of her that no one knew, a side that she would not easily show even to her closest relatives. Greetings to Madame Luo. You may rise. Perhaps it was because Jingwan had a different impression of her, but Madame Luo originally did not have any special thoughts about Sun Yijia. At this time, she appeared to be more intimate and gentle. Hello, older sister Jia. Jingwan said with a smile. Hello, younger sister Wan. There was an obvious smile on her originally cold face, and her eyes sparkled. Seeing that you are fine, I am relieved. In the morning, Sun Yijia was really frightened. When she did not see Jingwan, her hanging heart could not be at ease. Madame Luo saw that Sun Yijia was naturally close to Jingwan and did not have a high and mighty attitude. In the end, she was relieved and casually asked a few questions, such as whether Madame Sun was well and so on. In Duke Ding's mansion, Sun Yijia and Sun Yilin were the two most liked by Madame Sunday. However, Madame Sun did not treat them like ordinary people's grandmothers. She always had a smile on her face and did not ask about their well-being at all times. Their grandmother was always strict and serious. When she smiled, it was always faint. As for her kindness to outsiders, Sun Yijia never cared because she knew that her grandmother did not have much sincerity. Sun Yijia always thought that at least the grandmothers in the harem of officials and nobles should be the same as her own grandmother. But it turned out that was not the case. It turned out that younger sister Wan's grandmother treated her like a precious treasure in private. The natural intimacy could not be faked. It was a habit. Her grandmother's love for her and fifth brother was not fake. However, compared to the warmth of the grandmother and granddaughter in front of her, her family seemed a little cold. Faint envy could not help but appear in her eyes. In the face of Madame Luo's closeness, Sun Yijia's smile also increased. Madame Luo also called Sun Yijia Sister Jia. When Mama Gong returned, she also brought Qing Lan and Qing Mei with her. Madame Luo said, "Sister Jia, it is really boring to be with an old woman like me. You can go play with Wan Wan." "How could that be? It is my daughter's good fortune to be able to speak with Madame Luo." These words were not false. The feeling of being close to the present was something that could not be experienced at home. Madame Luo chuckled, "That's enough. Your little mouth is just like Wan Wan's. You are used to making people happy." Then, with a few words, she dismissed the two of them. The two of them held hands and walked unhurriedly towards the elegant begonia residence. They chatted and laughed along the way. They were like flowers and jade, charming and beautiful. Bystanders who looked at them felt comfortable and the depression in their hearts seemed to dissipate a little. Because of Sun Yijia's special identity, it did not take long for the entire Luo family's harem to know of her arrival. Everyone had different thoughts. As for Luo Jingying, who was pretending to be calm and collected, she once again broke her facade and tore her two handkerchiefs. She did not believe that Luo Jingwan would be so lucky. Perhaps it was because of something special, but she did not believe that she, Luo Jingwan, would have such a good life. It had to be said that Luo Jingying was sometimes a person who liked to be abused. She knew that every time she faced Jingwan, she would most likely be the one to suffer, but she still liked to get close to her. The situation that she saw was completely different from what she had expected. This kind of Sun Yijia was even more unheard of. Compared to the hundreds of thoughts that she had spent on Sun Yijia, she could not even exchange a single word with her. It was simply too nauseating. "Miss, Jiang family's cousin is here." Luo Jingying, who was tearing her handkerchief as if she was tearing Jingwan, suddenly showed a strange smile when she heard this. "My cousin came at the right time. Invite her here directly." In Sun Yijia's circle, her second aunt's cousin, Chang Lingshan, was still a bitch. She said that she was on good terms with her, but she was never willing to help introduce her to her. She always said that she was not qualified to talk to her, and all her words were full of flaunting. She said that she had seen some rare things in Ding General Duke's mansion and received some good things from Duke Ding's wife. Everyone knew what she was thinking, but she could not fall out with her. They were good sisters. If they fell out with each other over such a small matter, wouldn't it seem that she was narrow-minded and would ruin her reputation? Chang Lingshan wanted to show that she was superior in front of others and wanted to satisfy her vanity. Luo Jingying was the best candidate. Luo Jingying wanted to enter Sun Yilan's circle, so the only ladder that she could use was Chang Lingshan. The two of them got along so well that outsiders thought that their relationship was very good. Chapter 49. Before Chang Lingshan reached Luo Jingying's side, she had already seen Jingwan and Sun Yijia. She could not deceive herself and think that they were just people who looked like Sun Yijia. In order to please Sun Yijia, she knew her too well. Even if there was a smile on her face that she had never seen before, she was sure that it was Sun Yijia. Just as Luo Jingying wished, her jealousy and resentment at that moment could be felt by people who were far away. When Luo Jingying saw her, she almost laughed out loud. However, she seemed to have underestimated Chang Lingshan. In just a moment, Chang Lingshan put on a perfect smile and was ready to talk to Sun Yijia. She was a very realistic person. Since her cousin was close to Miss Sun, she could naturally take this opportunity to get closer to Miss Sunday. In order to achieve her goal, she did not mind flattering people she did not like. "Cousin, aren't you worried that not only will you not be able to make friends with Miss Sun, but you will also make her unhappy? After all, everyone can see that Miss Sun is happy now. If her mood is disturbed, everyone can imagine how she will react." Luo Jingying said with a smile. Chang Lingshan stopped and looked at Luo Jingying. Cousin, you are right. I was too happy to see Miss Sun and forgot for a moment. Thank you for reminding me. Her smile was gentle, and her words and actions were very appropriate. In the eyes of people who had integrated all kinds of etiquette into their habits since childhood, her performance was too deliberate, unreal, and pretentious. You're welcome. After all, cousin has always been very good to me. Was Luo Jingying really reminding Chang Lingshan? She was just worried that Sun Yijia would treat this bitch differently for Luo Jingwan's sake. If she and Luo Jingwan became enemies, it would not be good for her. Naturally, she could not let Chang Lingshan take advantage of her. What she said was the truth. No one could find fault with her. How could Chang Lingshan not know Luo Jingying's purpose? The two of them were almost the same. She did not want to talk to her anymore. I suddenly feel a little uncomfortable, so I will go back first. I will come to play with cousin another day. That's a pity. I happen to have something to do here, so I won't see you off. Naturally, she would not remind her of what happened to her grandfather in the flower market. No matter whether it was inappropriate or not, as a granddaughter, she did not go to greet her grandfather. This was a big mistake. She would find out about it soon. When the time came, she could not cover it up by saying, I don't know. Shouldn't she pay her respects to her grandfather when she went to his house? In the past, if Luo Peishan was not at home, then she was not required to pay her respects. Gradually, she became used to it. But today, she was so agitated that she even forgot that her grandmother was in the backyard of the Luo family. When she went back, she would definitely be severely reprimanded by her mother. When she thought of other people's mistakes, Luo Jingying's heart was at ease. Even the anger she suffered from Jingwan dissipated a little. When Jingwan and Luo Jingbo were about to arrive at Begonia House, they bumped into Luo Jingbo. Luo Jingbo only knew that his sister had a guest, but he did not expect it to be Sun Yijia. He was slightly startled. Greetings, Mississippi, Sun Yijia returned the greeting. Jingwan smiled. Third brother, this is, little sister, you know that third brother has been painting recently. I heard that you have a lot of paints here, so I came to take a look. Unexpectedly, you were not here. When I saw the paints, I did not want to get too excited and spill them, so I asked the servant girl to fetch water to wash them. Then, I saw the only book on your desk and flipped through it. I was a little fascinated. Your servant girl probably could not stand it and reminded me. Only then did I remember to go back and change my clothes. Can I lend this book to third brother to take a look? Luo Jingbo waved the book in his hand. Third brother, feel free to take it. Jingwan said indifferently. However, third brother's explanation seemed to be a little too clear. Even if he left a little later, there was no need for him to do so. There must be a reason. However, one thing was certain. He was really fascinated and did not leave for a long time. Third brother knows that little sister is the most considerate. Also, have someone send me some paints. Luo Jingbo said without any trace of politeness. Okay. With outsiders around, Luo Jingbo still did not behave properly. Jingwan felt rather helpless about this. Then I will leave first. Luo Jingbo casually cupped his hands towards Sun Yijia again. His departing posture was somewhat confident and at ease. Sun Yijia could not help but look at Luo Jingbo's back. The gongzi that she normally interacted with, whether it was her own brothers or those outside, including the princes other than Jin Qin Wang, which one of them was not a gentleman, modest and courteous. Their words and actions were not the least bit good. She was very clear that they were not like this in private. There was no need to talk about Jin Qin Wang. He was used to being insolent and did not put anyone in his eyes. He did not give anyone face. Even the emperor could not do anything about it. However, this Gongzi was somewhat different. His words and actions were not the most strict, but it could not be said that he was wrong. However, he was free and easy and casual. His true temperament aside, it was probably that he did not have any conflict of interest with the Sun family. He did not care what impression Sun Yijia had of him. Wan Mimi, he is your blood-related older brother. N. Jingwan led Sun Yijia into the begonia elegant residence. In the courtyard, she saw the servants that did not belong to the Luo family. This was probably the reason why Luo Jingbua explained. They came from the lotus pond and walked very slowly. This period of time could not be considered short. However, these people from the Sun family only saw him come out and did not see him go in. It was inevitable that they would think of something. Even if they were blood-related brothers, there were times when they had to pay attention to the precautions between men and women. Luo Jingbua naturally thought of Jingwan. Although he was not in tune, he would definitely not make a mistake when it came to matters that he should pay attention to. Jingwan's attention was not on those servants. Her gaze was somewhat fervently looking at the 1.5-meter tall peony that was full of vitality. The huge celadone flower pot was brand new. It was obvious that it had just been replaced. Sun Yijia saw Jingwan's expression and smiled somewhat proudly. It's for you. Do you like it? I spent a lot of effort to snatch it from fifth brother. Jingwan looked at it carefully. Not only was this peony in good condition, but it was also the best of the 4 famous flowers, Wei Zi. In this world, it was definitely a treasure that could only be encountered by chance and not sought. Although Jingwan liked it, she could not accept it. Jia Mimi, it's too precious. I can't accept it. What are you saying? If you were someone who didn't know about flowers and trees, I naturally wouldn't give it to you. However, you clearly know more about flowers and trees than my fifth brother. It definitely won't be wasted in your hands. Moreover, in my opinion, having a good sister like you is more precious than anything else. It must be young Master Sun's treasure. How can I, Wan Mimi, just accept it? Don't think too much. My fifth brother has collected all 4 famous peonies. There's also another Wei Zi that is even better than this one. Otherwise, even if I'm his biological sister, he would never give it to me. Sun Yijia would never tell Jingwan that her brother was preparing to transplant the other Wei Zi as soon as he returned. He wanted to borrow her hand to give it to Jingwan. She reminded him that if that was really the case, even if she snatched it, it would be too eye-catching. Who didn't know how precious these flowers and trees were to him? That was why Sun Yilin took a step back and settled for the next best thing. Sun Yijia knew that her fifth brother was really serious this time. After all, if one wanted to get flowers and trees from him, it would be fine if they were ordinary flowers. However, if one wanted famous flowers and trees, even the emperor would have to issue an imperial edict to obtain them. Of course, the emperor wouldn't go so far as to do such a thing. It could be imagined that he took the initiative and willingly gave away the best flowers and trees. What better way to prove his sincerity than this? Sun Yijia was going all out for her brother. The usually proud and arrogant Ding General Manor's legitimate daughter had put down her pride and coaxed and pestered Sun Yilin. In addition, she acted coquettishly and almost acted shamelessly. Finally, she got what she wanted and achieved a feat that others couldn't. This also showed the people of Ding General Manor how much Sun Yijia cared about this new friend of hers. Jingwan was still a little hesitant. Sun Yijia made a ruthless move. Wan Mimi, if you don't want it, I'll immediately have someone burn it. Jingwan looked at Sun Yijia and said helplessly, how can you be like this? Sun Yijia raised her chin slightly and snorted. Her expression clearly said, this is how I am. After deciding to accept it, Jingwan didn't argue. She first did a little treatment and then directly transplanted it into the courtyard. Chapter 50. Although Jingwan's small courtyard was not as big as Sun Yijia's courtyard in Duke Dinggua's mansion, nor was it as gorgeous, it had an exquisite layout. Sun Yijia liked it even more. In addition, there were no restrictions here, so she trusted Jingwan completely. Sun Yijia was even showing signs of going crazy. Her personal servants, especially the wet nurse, wanted to say something many times, but in the end, they held back. They had never seen their young lady so happy. Without comparison, some things were hard to discover. Thinking back to the past, they only thought that she was the most standard and the most outstanding noble lady. They only thought that she had a cold personality, but it turned out that she was restraining herself and even suppressing her own nature. Perhaps she had never been truly happy before. They were inseparable from her almost every day. Even if they didn't completely understand her thoughts, they more or less knew. Although they felt sorry for her, because of her usual habits, they only thought that she was just a little heavy-minded and shouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, even if they wanted to comfort her, their words wouldn't have any effect. After a long time, it was even harder for them to say anything. She was of noble birth and could have lived a carefree life. However, because of her noble status, she was tightly bound by it. Because her ancestors and fathers wanted to protect the Sun family's foundation that had been accumulated for thousands of years, they were never satisfied with their noble status. If they wanted to be more noble, then they had to give and sacrifice. And the person who enjoyed the most would definitely have to sacrifice the most. She had 3 blood-related brothers, so perhaps they could share some of the burden. She was the only daughter of the first wife. This only represented uniqueness and also sorrow. When Sun Yijia came down from the swing, her servants' hearts that were in their throats finally settled down. Just now, Sun Yijia had asked them to push harder and harder. She was getting higher and higher, and even the flying sound of her clothes even made it sound. They were afraid that she would fall. One had to know that when she sat on the swing in the past, at most, her feet wouldn't even be considered high from the ground. This time, the height of her flying height was almost the same as the horizontal bar above. The wet nurse hurriedly looked at her palm. Sure enough, it was red from the abrasion. With a gentle touch, Sun Yijia couldn't help but withdraw her hand. It was obvious that it was painful. What should I do? What should I do? Sun Yijia didn't care. She only knew that she was very happy now. This little bit of pain was nothing. Nanny, I'm fine. Ah, blood. Qingju pointed at the blood on the swing and exclaimed. Almost everyone present knew what it was immediately, including the rash Qingju. After she spoke, she realized that she had done something wrong. Her face instantly turned red and she was at a loss. Qingju hurried forward to pull her away and secretly glared at her. Sun Yijia, who was originally in a good mood, was now so embarrassed that she wanted to crawl into a hole to hide her face. She finally noticed the slight discomfort of being ignored by her. If it were in the past, she would have noticed it a long time ago. Even when she first had her period, she had never been so embarrassed before. Moreover, it was in front of little sister Wan. Fortunately, it was at little sister Wan's place. If it had been in the morning, it would have been even more embarrassing. However, she wasn't so crazy in the morning that she didn't notice it. She would have noticed it immediately and definitely wouldn't have embarrassed herself. Fortunately, Sun Yijia's wet nurse knew that her daughter's period was not very accurate. However, she also knew that it would probably be in the next few days. Before she left, she had already made preparations. Miss Luo, I need to borrow your place. Nanny, you're treating me as an outsider. Jingwan waved her hand and walked to Sun Yijia's side. She gently stroked her back. Sun Yijia, who was comforted, breathed a sigh of relief. Compared to the maidservant's shyness and slight panic, Jingwan was calmer than the wet nurse and nanny. She ordered the maidservants to fetch hot water. After confirming that Sun Yijia indeed had a change of clothes, she asked her wet nurse to help and led Sun Yijia to the room to change. When Sun Yijia finished changing, her face was still a little flushed. However, she felt much more comfortable than before. She couldn't help but whisper, "Little sister Wan, you're so smart." She replaced the contents of the menstrual belt with cotton. The stitches were so fine and dense that it was almost impossible to see. It wouldn't be abrasive at all. Then, she sewed the underwear onto the specially made underwear. It was close-fitting and comfortable to wear. It might be very troublesome for ordinary people, but for noble ladies like her, there were so many people serving them. Even if they changed frequently, it didn't take much effort to do it. Moreover, they basically didn't need to take apart and wash them. Jingwan chuckled, "Big sister Jia, it might be a little tight. However, I think that after you go back, your servants will help you deal with it." Sun Yijia's wet nurse hadn't come out yet. Jingwan's wet nurse was also still in the room. Sun Yijia saw that Jingwan was calm and composed, and gradually stopped being shy. Whether it was in her heart or in her appearance, she had shared the most intimate things. Even her own sisters weren't so close. Sun Yijia felt that little sister Wan was good no matter how she looked at it. It would be great if she was her biological sister. However, it didn't matter. It was the same to let her be her sister-in-law. It hadn't even been a day, but Sun Yijia could completely open her heart to someone without any precautions. It was definitely a miracle. However, perhaps she could also feel that Jingwan didn't have any bad intentions towards her. "Miss, it's ready." Qing Mei brought over a small bowl of reddish-brown water. Jingwan gestured to Sun Yijia and said, "I asked the kitchen to cook it. Drink it. It's good for your blood and can warm your stomach." Sun Yijia didn't hesitate at all. She picked it up and used a spoon to ladle it up and drank it one mouthful after another. After Sun Yijia finished drinking, she wiped her mouth. "Little sister Wan, what did you cook it with? Not only is it delicious, but after drinking it, it's very warm and comfortable. When you go back, I'll give you the recipe. This recipe can be used by any woman. Although the degree of effectiveness is obviously different, it's beneficial and not harmful. When you go back, ask the servants to cook it for you. You can also drink some on a daily basis." Sun Yijia accepted it without hesitation. "How is it? Does it still hurt?" Jingwan held Sun Yijia's hand and touched her palm that was still a little red. "I don't know what your wet nurse applied on my hand, but it's very cool and comfortable. It's much better than just now. When we go back, it'll definitely be fine. That's a cream made by Nanny. It's very effective for these small abrasions and cuts. I often fiddle with those flowers and trees by myself, so it's inevitable that my hand will get some small injuries. It's all thanks to Nanny that my hand can be so well maintained." Sun Yijia played with Jingwan's hand. "It's true. Your hand is even prettier than mine. However, it's not just your hand. I feel that little sister Wan's skin is very good everywhere." She rolled up Jingwan's sleeve and lovingly stroked her arm. Not only that, she even reached out to pinch her face. Jingwan smiled and dodged. "I have my own secret recipe, but I've used it all up. After I came to the capital, I didn't have time to make it. Why don't I give you some to try? Why don't I give you the recipe and you can have someone make it? No, such a precious recipe is one of a kind. Do you think it's like those blood-nourishing recipes that can be found everywhere? You give it to everyone you see. You're really thoughtless." Jingwan pointed in the direction of the Wei Zi with her chin. "Sister Jia is not the same. You're thoughtless. I'm presenting it to Buddha with borrowed flowers. It's not mine, so I don't feel bad at all. Just like Sister Jia, although it's mine, it's not very important, so I don't feel bad. Even so, Sunny Jia still refused. If she took such a good thing back and had someone make it, it would be impossible to keep it a secret. She had come into contact with too many nobles, so it would be better for it to be leaked from little sister Wang's hands. She might even gain some benefits. These benefits to her were just icing on the cake. It was completely unnecessary. In little sister Wang's hands, it might be of great use. Just give me more of the finished product. I'll secretly hide it and use it myself. I won't give it to anyone. Jingwan smiled and nodded in agreement. When Sunny Jia's wet nurse came out, she saw that her young lady was in good spirits and her face was rosy. She was not like her usual self. These days, she was always listless and pale. Sunny Jia did not hesitate to praise the drink just now. Sunny Jia's wet nurse was very clear that her young lady's condition was not only because of the bowl of sugar water. Her good mood was also a big factor. However, all of this was because of Jingwan. Hence, she thanked Jingwan very seriously. Nanny, you're too polite. Since you call me sister, you naturally won't call me that for nothing. Jingwan smiled faintly. If Jingwan was good to someone, she would not hold back anything. She did not even care about the invisible rule of not giving away things that had entered her mouth easily. Chapter 51. Jingwan's servants didn't look happy, but Jingwan's expression didn't change. I have a guest here. If she has something to say, tell her to come back later. Her tone was light, but she wasn't polite at all. But the servant girl still wanted to say something. What? Third older sister's guest is so honorable that I, as her younger sister, can't bear to see her. Luo Jingying was dressed in plain clothes and had a bit of elegance. She walked over gracefully with a gentle smile. Jingwan saw several people following behind her, including the servant who guarded the courtyard. The servant's face was slightly angry at this time, and her clothes and hair were slightly messy. She didn't need to think to know that she stopped Luo Jingying from coming in, so Luo Jingying brought people and forced their way in. Anyone could tell that there was something wrong with her words. Although Sun Yijia was the only legitimate daughter of Duke Ding, there were also several sisters born of concubines in the family, not to mention many cousins. Because her status was the most honorable, she couldn't bear to see them fawning over her, so her relationship with them was similar to that of an outsider. Although she rarely asked about those things, she knew a lot of troublesome things. However, since it was related to younger sister Wan's family matters, she sat on the side and remained silent. Her face returned to its usual coldness. It's not that I can't bear to see you, but that I don't want you to see them. It's troublesome. Luo Jingying's smiling face stiffened. She didn't expect that Luo Jingwan would be so rude in front of outsiders. Third older sister, your words hurt younger sister's heart. If your heart is hurt, go find a doctor to prescribe medicine. I don't treat patients here. Sun Yijia almost laughed out loud and hurriedly covered her mouth with a handkerchief. Younger sister Wan was such a good-natured person, but there were also times when she was sharp-tongued. Luo Jingying repeatedly told herself to stay calm. Her mother's words echoed in her mind over and over again. However, her mother didn't know that Luo Jingwan was a person who didn't play by the rules. She never cooperated with you when you tried to maintain a harmonious relationship with her. She didn't care about what other people couldn't say. She often went straight to your heart. No matter how good-tempered you were, you would be angered by her. Moreover, Luo Jingying wasn't a good-tempered person. Third older sister, please don't be angry. Younger sister only admires Miss Sun's talent, but I never had the chance to be friends with Miss Sunday. Today, when I found out that Miss Sun came to the Fu to look for third older sister, I couldn't suppress my yearning and shamelessly came here. When she turned to look at Sun Yijia, her eyes were quite fervent, and she greeted her in a dignified manner. Sun Yijia nodded. Miss Luo is too kind. My talent is nothing. It's just a small matter. On the other hand, Miss Luo's poetry is agile and graceful. It's very well written. Therefore, even if she was as prideful as she was, one shouldn't underestimate her way of doing things. In the capital's social circle, even if there were unmarried women who were far from her level, she would still remember them even if she had only met them once or twice. She would know their talents in certain aspects. Sure enough, Luo Jingying revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Has Miss Sun seen my poetry? Then, she slightly restrained herself and smiled humbly. However, she couldn't hide the pride in her eyes. I'm only slightly good at poetry. I'm far from Miss Sun's proficiency in the four arts. However, speaking of which, third older sister isn't bad in these aspects. After all, grandmother dotes on third older sister so much. In the past few years in Qi and Fu, she must have hired a master to teach third older sister. Third older sister and Miss Sun are so close. If there's a chance for you to cooperate, it might be a good story. Oh, then I really can't do as you wish. It's not like fourth younger sister doesn't know that older sister is just a common person. I can't even recognize a few words. Naturally, I can't play with those elegant things. Therefore, Luo Jingying always wanted to tear her mouth apart. She was clearly embarrassed to speak, but she was always able to say it without a care in the world. She was calm and indifferent. Originally, she should be ashamed to show her face. However, from her mouth, these were clearly small tricks. It wasn't that she didn't know how to, but that she disdained to learn them. Third older sister, there's no need to be so humble. In front of fourth younger sister, older sister has never known how to write the word humble. Jingwan wasn't a mean person, but when she was mean, she simply wasn't human. No matter how good you were at dealing with people, she could easily make you speechless. However, until now, the only person she was mean to was Luo Jingying. Younger sister just wants to be close to third older sister. Third older sister, why are you always so harsh? Luo Jingying gently bit her lips with a delicate and pitiful look. Her words and actions were describing how bad Jingwan was. You should have been used to it long ago. You clearly know that you are being bullied by me every time, but you don't know how to avoid it. Every few days, you bump into me. Those who know will naturally understand that fourth younger sister is good at everything. On the contrary, I, as your older sister, am unruly, indecent, arrogant and despotic. Those who don't know will just think that fourth younger sister needs to be taught a lesson. If you don't bully me, you will feel uncomfortable all over. Luo Jingying's face turned green and white. It was very interesting. However, even so, she still didn't leave. In the eyes of Sun Yijia and the others, it was simply a perfect confirmation of Jingwan's words. Sun Yijia looked at Luo Jingying with a strange look in her eyes. It was as if she was saying, so there is actually such a person in this world. However, when she looked at Jingwan, there was a trace of respect unconsciously. It turned out that she could treat someone she didn't like this. Yes, she should bring her home and try it out next time. Jingwan was a little speechless. She seemed to have unintentionally led a perfect noble lady astray. Luo Jingying was the most upset. Clearly, it was Luo Jingying who was the bad one. Sun Yijia didn't see how bad she was and even took her words seriously. As expected, the arrogant beauty was just a facade. On the inside, she was just like that bitch Luo Jingwan. She was used to putting on an act to deceive the world. It was time for the world to see how rotten they were. She couldn't help but bear a grudge against Sun Yijia. One day, she would make these high and mighty noble ladies kneel at her feet. Luo Jingying knew that if she continued, she would only be humiliated. Thus, she chose to remain silent. Jingwan and Sun Yijia also ignored her. She didn't want to leave, so they pretended that she didn't exist. Because Sun Yijia was inconvenient, they talked quietly. "Young miss, it's not good. Concubine Bai has miscarried. She's shouting that the madam caused her to miscarry. The madam wants you to go over." A sudden voice broke the silence. Even Sun Yijia felt a little awkward at this time. Such a filthy matter was brought to a young lady's house, and she even wanted the young lady to go over and take a look. What was this? What kind of rules were there to speak of? It made people even more suspicious. Was this family's backyard all like this? If this spread out, who would dare to let their young miss be on good terms with this family's young miss? It would lead their young miss astray. However, this old woman didn't come in from the outside. Instead, she came in from the side of Begonia House. Generally speaking, this kind of layout was known to be connected to the courtyard of the person closest to her. It went without saying who that person was. This old woman's words were a slap in the face. Luo Jingying covered her mouth in surprise. When she looked at Sun Yijia again, she was so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. It seemed that she had dirtied her ears by letting her hear this. "Young Miss Sun, I'm really sorry. I didn't think that." Jingwan glanced at her. Although she was still indifferent, Luo Jingying felt a little frightened and instinctively shut her mouth. The gloating feeling in his heart and the pleasure of seeing Jingwan embarrass herself suddenly disappeared. My mother usually doesn't care about things. She probably didn't know that there was such an unruly person in her courtyard. "Nanny, take this old woman away and teach her the rules," Jingwan said indifferently. The old maid immediately burst into tears. When she appeared and shouted those words without caring about anything, Nanny Gong was prepared. Two strong old maids immediately stepped forward to cover her mouth and dragged her away. Nanny Gong also followed. Jingwan looked at Luo Jingying again. "You've achieved your purpose of coming here. Now you can get lost." "Third sister, what are you saying?" "I'm here because of young Miss Sun." Chapter 52. This kind of superficial cultivation was not something that could be done overnight. No matter how calm she wanted to be, when her soft spot was poked, she couldn't help but panic. Jingwan's face was cold. "I know my mother's personality the best. She doesn't even dare to kill an ant, so why would she be so ruthless to take a life? In this Luo family's backyard, there are only two people who want to harm her. Either it was that idiot concubine Bai who directed and acted on her own, or... Since you knew in advance, the possibility of the latter person is higher. No matter who it is, she better clean up her tail, otherwise. Why aren't you getting out of here? Are you waiting for me to call someone to beat you out with a broom?" Luo Jingying dared to be arrogant in front of Jingwan, but she had never seen her so cold. She was inexplicably afraid and didn't dare to explain anything. She took her people and fled. After she went out, she couldn't help but be even more afraid. Previously, when she came back from the garden, her mother asked her a few questions about why she was unhappy. She told her in detail, but Madame Lu only smiled and told her that she would help her vent her anger soon. She also said that it was better to have a noble daughter. She thought that it must be her mother who was going to make a move, so she almost didn't think about it and excitedly ran to Begonia House. In the end, she didn't get to see a good show. Not only would she be punished when she went back, but more importantly, she might ruin her mother's big plan. Jingwan sat quietly, but Sun Yijia clearly felt that her mood was not right. For the first time, she ignored the wet nurse's opinion and didn't get up to leave because of her signal. The matter had already happened, so leaving like this would hurt people's feelings. Moreover, the reason why that old woman came was obviously because of her. Otherwise, who would do such a strenuous and unrewarding thing? The purpose was self-evident. Little sister Wan, Jingwan looked at her. She didn't want to smile, but she didn't force herself to smile. Sister Jia, I've let you see a joke. Little sister Wan, in fact, this is nothing. Which backyard can be clean? Moreover, I believe you, and I also believe that the madam who can give birth to a woman like you is not a vicious person. Anyone with eyes can see that this matter is caused by a villain. Don't take it to heart. Sister Jia treats me sincerely. Since this matter is out in the open, I naturally won't hide it. We're good sisters, after all. Naturally, we'll be honest with each other. I also believe that Sister Jia won't have a bad opinion of me because of this. I just hope that Sister Jia won't let this matter affect your mood. This matter won't affect me, but your sulky little face is affecting me. Sunny Jia reached out a finger and scratched her nose. Don't worry about this kind of thing. At the very least, there's still your grandmother. To be honest, Sister Jia, no matter what the reason is, I don't care. What I care about is that that little life is gone before it can even take shape. To be honest, I don't like father's concubine son and daughter, but that's only because of their status, not because of themselves. I can treat them coldly and ignore them as long as they don't provoke me. Under the same roof, I can live peacefully with them, but I don't want to see them lose their lives for no reason. Since the heavens allowed them to come to this world, others shouldn't take their lives away so easily. Sunny Jia was startled. She didn't think that little sister Wan's heart would be so kind and gentle. This way of thinking isn't wrong, but sometimes, this will harm yourself and your loved ones. Jingwan smiled faintly. Sister Jia, you're thinking too much. I'm just adhering to the principle of not taking the initiative to hurt or scheme against others. However, if others take the initiative to attack me, I won't be polite either. If I don't teach some people a deep lesson, they'll always think that our second branch is made of mud. Sister Jia, why don't you go back first today? Jingwan said as she moved closer. With Sister Jia here, it's not convenient for me to teach someone a lesson. It's one thing to let you know, and another thing to let you see it with your own eyes. This image is still important. Sunny Jia snorted with laughter. It's impossible for me to see it even if you want to. Even if you're willing, your family won't be willing. Alright, I'll go back first. I'll come back another day to play. If you have nothing to do, you should go to Duke Dingwa's Fu to visit me. I'm usually very bored. Otherwise, be careful that I don't run to your house every day. Jingwan nodded in agreement. She had a servant girl copy the prescription for her, and then sent her away. Jingwan turned back. She wasn't in a hurry to go to Falling Plum House to take a look. Where's that biddy? Young miss, she's in the woodshed. Wet nurse, follow me. The others don't need to follow me. They knew that their young miss was worried that they would hear something they shouldn't hear. However, they didn't think that she was younger than them. Sometimes she was like this. As servants, they couldn't disobey her. Outside the woodshed, a rough biddy was guarding. Mama Gong wasn't there. She must have gone to check on concubine Bai. After the door was opened, Jingwan walked in. She didn't care about the dirty and messy place in the eyes of others. Compared to the crying and howling before, the biddy was very quiet at this moment. However, unexpectedly, her body couldn't stop trembling. If it was because of the fear of death, it was understandable. However, from her eyes, Jingwan felt that it was more than that. Did she say anything? She asked the rough biddy guarding the door. Young miss, no. After bringing her here, Mama Gong asked her, but she didn't say a word. Jingwan nodded, not surprised. Now, she still doesn't want to say anything. The biddy raised her head and looked at Jingwan. Her lips moved, and there was hope and hesitation in her eyes. It was obvious that she was struggling in her heart. However, in the end, she remained silent, lowered her head, and curled into a ball. Jingwan left. She was not angry, happy, or sad. But it was this attitude that made the old woman even more afraid. Before, Nanny Gong did not scold her, nor did she order people to beat her. She just asked a few questions casually, and then approached her and said, "You can be considered as an elder of the Luo family, so you probably won't betray your master just for a little money. Since you can splash dirty water on Miss in front of outsiders, obviously you don't care about life and death, then you probably also have a foot in Mistress Bai's side. Make the best use of everything. You are not a lonely old woman. If you are really alone, you should be thinking about living a comfortable life. How could you do such a thing in your late years? There is only one possibility left. Someone has captured your relatives to threaten you. Perhaps you also need money for them. It is understandable that you did such a thing. However, it is understandable, but it is unforgivable. No matter how many relatives you have, whether they are in or out of the mansion, you will meet them one by midnight tonight at the latest." The biddy didn't want to believe it, and she didn't want to believe it. However, Mama Gong's attitude was too calm and firm. In addition, the third young lady didn't panic at all. Even if she repeatedly denied it, she became more and more afraid. She was old and it didn't matter if she died, but her only grandson's parents died early, and he was less than 10 years old. The more the biddy thought about it, the more tears fell down. The third young lady had always been kind. Perhaps. The biddy suddenly got up, rushed to the door, and knocked hard on the door. "Young lady, I know I'm wrong. I'll tell you everything. I don't deserve to die. I only beg you to save my poor grandson." However, no one could hear her. It was quiet in the Falling Plum house. This was the main courtyard of the second branch. Only Jingwan's parents lived here. The concubines and the 2 concubine-born sisters lived in the small courtyard at the back. Presumably, everyone was there now. "Third young lady, you're here. Madam has something to do and is not here. Come in and have a seat. I'll make you a cup of tea." Madame Zhang's head maidservant, Lu Mei, saw her and quickly came forward. However, she was a little anxious. Why did the third young lady come at this time? Didn't she have an important guest? Jingwan waved her hand. "How's concubine Bai?" Chapter 53. I've already detained her. I'll deal with her later. How's it going over there? The child is gone. Concubine Bai is crying and making a fuss. It seems that it was planned. The madams of the other branches and the old madam were all alarmed. The old madam didn't come and handed the matter over to the old madam. I don't know what's going on now. Knowing that Jingwan already knew, she didn't hide it. I'll go and take a look. Third young lady, the old madam strictly forbade you from knowing about this from the beginning. She didn't want you to know about this, so you shouldn't go. The old madam is with her and the old madam will handle it impartially. She won't let the old madam suffer. You see. If the third young lady went over and they couldn't stop her, she would be punished by the old madam. She really didn't want the third young lady to see such a troublesome thing. Jingwan paused. Where's my father? Is he not in the house? The second master went out to meet a friend. I've already sent someone to invite him. I don't know when he will be back. Okay, I'll go to grandmother. She had a big mountain to support her. If she went over, no one would say anything and she wouldn't get the maids punished. At this point, even if the maids knew what Jingwan was going to do, they didn't dare to stop her. Madame Luo didn't seem to be surprised by Jingwan's arrival. Continue to protect her. It's because all of you protect her that she only grows older but not wiser. She's already so old, but she's still as innocent and naive as a girl. When you get married in the future, I'll see what she'll do. Can she continue to rely on her husband and her son? Men spend most of their time outside. If someone really catches the opportunity, they'll definitely scheme against her. If 3 or 5 times aren't enough, they'll do it 8 or 10 times. Sooner or later, your father will have a grudge. Without your father's support, whatever Jingbo wants to do will be in vain. So, before I get married, I have to quickly find a daughter-in-law who can help and protect her. Jingwan said with a flattering smile. How could Madame Luo not know what she was thinking? She glanced at her. I'm already worried enough about your marriage. You still want me to find a wife for Jingbo? Do you have the heart to let grandmother work so hard? What a heartless girl. Jingwan saw that her grandmother was angry, so she hurried forward and said, I'm not asking you to look for a candidate. I just hope that you can take a look at the candidate when father and the others decide. Seeing that Madame Luo was still unmoved, Jingwan softened her voice. She called her grandmother coquettishly and gently shook her arm. Her voice was so sweet that Jingwan herself almost had goosebumps. At first, Jingwan could still act coquettishly naturally, but after a long time, she felt like she was about to break down. Madame Luo saw that she was about to die and knew that she had reached her limit. She finally relaxed her expression and said, helplessly, Okay, I promise you. In the beginning, he taught Jingwan how to show weakness at appropriate times. As for later, he seemed to enjoy watching Jingwan act coquettishly. The reason was that it was okay for a short period of time. After a while, Jingwan's little appearance made people very happy. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief. It was simply killing her. In her previous life, before the family incident, although she wasn't arrogant, she was still proud and was flattered by everyone. After the incident, especially after her grandmother's health collapsed, whether it was the external environment or herself, she would never allow herself to be weak and would never show weakness to others. That kind of pride in her bones, even if it wasn't obvious in this life, was still there. Madame Luo stopped teasing her, but she thought of something else and her face darkened. Sister Jia left because she knew about this. Jingwan nodded and briefly explained what happened. These idiots, there are some things that they never understand. Madame Luo didn't know whether to sigh or be angry. Jingwan hesitated for a moment and asked, Grandmother, how did third aunt marry into our family? Although the Lu family was established as a duke and still had a noble title, with the decline of the Lu family, even if Madame Lu married into the Luo family when Luo Peishan didn't hold the position of minister, it was still a proper marriage. Generally, even the families of 4th or 5th rank officials wouldn't look at them. Jingwan didn't look down on the Lu family, but in this place, where people paid attention to matching social status, it was strange that Madame Lu married into the Luo family. When your grandfather was young, he had some friendship with your third aunt's father and asked your grandfather for help. At that time, your eldest uncle was already married, and your father and mother were also engaged. Your fourth uncle was much younger than Madame Lu, so only your third uncle, who was born of a concubine, was left. The Lu family didn't mind, so your grandfather agreed to this marriage. So that was it. However, this also created a pair of resentful couples. Whether it was Luo Romping or Madame Lu, in fact, they looked down on each other from the bottom of their hearts. Madame Lu looked down on Luo Romping because he was born of a concubine and resented that she became a mother the moment she married into the family. However, she didn't have the courage to break off the marriage. She also knew very well that with her situation at that time, she couldn't find a better husband than Luo Rongbing. She was proud and arrogant, and Luo Rongbing, who wasn't valued since childhood, used his arrogance to hide his inferiority. He despised the Lu family from the bottom of his heart, but he didn't dare to disobey Luo Peishan. Thus, for so many years, he lived peacefully and happily. Luo Rongbing had a lot of beautiful women in his harem, but other than his eldest concubine's son Luo Jingming and his eldest concubine daughter Luo Jingqiang, there were only 2 or 3 children born of concubines. They were completely out of proportion to the huge group of beautiful women in his harem. Moreover, they were all relatively young. If they weren't weak, they were sickly. Many people in the Luo family knew that this was only because Madame Lu had loosened her grip on them in the past few years. As for whether it was because she had discovered her conscience, or because she wanted to accumulate some good karma for her children, or because she thought that their existence would no longer affect her and her children, only she knew. It wasn't that Luo Rongbing didn't know her methods. Among the 4 brothers, he had the most concubines, but not many of them were pregnant. Even if they were pregnant, most of them would suffer miscarriages or die shortly after birth. Even if he had a pig's brain, he should have known what was going on. However, he didn't care and didn't ask. Even the concubines that he doted on at that time would at most criticize Madame Lu. They didn't scold her for being cruel and merciless, but they said that she didn't manage the household properly. Those who didn't know would think that he valued his wife. In fact, he was just selfish and cold by nature. He only cared about a moment of pleasure and could turn around and pretend that he didn't know anything. Outside, Luo Rongbing had always been a person who cherished his reputation. He still wanted to have a bright future, a high position, and a generous salary. Naturally, his reputation couldn't be bad. Because Madame Lu was very clear about this, she became more and more unscrupulous. Luo Peishan was naturally not a person who would intervene in his son's backyard. It was just that he inadvertently learned about his 3rd son's absurd behavior. He also had the idea to punish him. However, when he found out that the husband and wife were just snakes and rats in a nest, he was too lazy to ask. As long as they didn't make a scene outside and become a joke, he would let them do whatever they wanted behind closed doors. Madame Luo naturally didn't want to care about concubine Bai's trivial matter. She left it to her eldest daughter-in-law to handle. If she went there, it would show that she didn't trust her eldest daughter-in-law. However, she also thought that Jingwan might come to find her, so she didn't say anything to her eldest daughter-in-law. Moreover, when Jingwan learned that her eldest aunt was handling this matter, she couldn't let her lose face. She also promised Madame Luo that she would just take a look. When they saw Madame Luo arrive, except for Madame Bai, who was lying in bed after the miscarriage, everyone hurriedly greeted her. Seeing Jingwan by her side, even if Madame Zhang was anxious, she couldn't say anything. Madame Bai, who was crying and howling like a shrew and refused to speak properly, automatically shut her mouth when she saw Madame Luo. Madame Luo, please forgive me, this concubine, that's enough. Lie down. Madame Luo interrupted her. Then she looked at Madame Bai. On the day she entered the capital, this woman should have greeted her at the gate, but she didn't have any impression of her. Willow leaf eyebrows, an oval face, and because of the miscarriage, her face was pale and she looked very weak. She was delicate and pitiful. However, Madame Luo's face didn't have the slightest fluctuation of emotion. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.